It is like a jungle out here. I'm Gretchen Voelcker. I am the owner and winemaker of Luna Hart Wines, and we're in one of the vineyards that I source my fruit from, Hendricks Vineyard in Ballard Canyon. But first I'd like to tell you a little bit about Luna Hart. So Luna Hart's my passion project that I started in 2014, initially as a work trade with a friend of mine who gave me a ton of grapes as payment for helping him out in his vineyard that year. And it was a push out the door to start my own project and really the opportunity to invest in my own education and tinker and toy with different winemaking ideas. And Luna Hart's now grown to be 1,400 cases, so still quite small production boutique wines, focusing solely on Grüner Veltliner, Sauvignon Blanc, Cab Franc, and Syrah. And so I purchased my fruit from around Santa Barbara County, all from vineyards that are farmed sustainable, organic, and biodynamic, making minimal intervention wines. So the wines are unfined, unfiltered, native fermentation, just a touch of sulfur to make them age-worthy as well. Well, first off, I'm from Philadelphia, so I never would have thought that I would be here talking about the wines that I make. But I grew up on a farm, so I was drawn to the outdoors. And my parents and I moved to Brussels when I was in high school. My parents got into wine tasting and shared that with me. And it was this idea of creative science that really captured me. I was always a very literal left-brain gal and was really hoping that wine could be a more creative thing, but still in the sciences. And then I didn't study it. I studied business and plant sciences and really built my career through doing it over the last 12 years and have always been really lucky to work with small brands, and really having Luna Hart so early on allowed me to really define and build on this style and this idea of what I wanted to produce. So I built most of my career here in Santa Barbara County. When I graduated from college, I wanted to get my feet wet in the wine industry and started applying to harvest internships throughout the state of California and had offers throughout. And ultimately I picked here without knowing anything about the wines or the people. But I was 22 and I saw the beautiful town of Santa Barbara, and I felt like what better place to start making some wine. But I really feel so fortunate to have landed here for three big reasons. Number one being that we have the highest percentage of women in wine, and specifically women winemakers. Number two being that we have a really entrepreneurial wine spirit. So there's a lot of small brands like Luna Hart, really making it have this community feeling of a high tide raises all ships. And then lastly, for me, looking to explore that creative side of science, we have over 75 different varietals in Santa Barbara County because we have all these really unique microclimates. And that really allows us to make whatever wine we want, both stylistically and varietally, and really lets me, as I said, explore that creativity and build a brand on 4 unlikely varietals to pair together as well. Minimal intervention wines, to me, it was getting back to the heart of making wines that are really representative of terroir, both in time and in place. And so really spending the time in the vineyard to get to a point where we can attempt to have bright natural acidity as well as flavor, so that I'm able to pick the grapes and add a minimal amount of sulfur, so that natural acid is the natural protectant in the wine. So for me, in my cellar, all of the wines are native fermentation, both primary and secondary. And neutral oak, so not overly tainted by oak profile, as well as sulfur within the Demeter guidelines. Organic guidelines differ from country to country, but Demeter for biodynamics is 100 ppm total sulfur maximum. And so really making the wines, challenging myself to make the wines in years when we have more extreme weather, it certainly is a challenge to make these wines where we aren't having to use modern tools of winemaking. As we get these more extreme heat swings, especially during ripening, what happens is the vines actually shut down. And so they, as the grapes ripen, you have this increase in sugar, increase in flavor, and drop in acid. But when the heat gets so high, the vines actually stop photosynthesizing, but you still get this spike in sugar and this plummet in acid. So the flavors aren't developing because the photosynthesis isn't there, but you have this chemistry jump. So it's becoming much, much more challenging to find that little spot of harmony where you can pick balanced flavors and acidity. And then also with those jumps, I mean, you can see a sugar jump of 5 bricks overnight. It's pretty extreme. So I actually am still experimenting with this. I'm experimenting with what the wines look like when you pick them to hedge on an extreme weather event. And if I am willing to embrace a little bit of a lighter style in order to sort of come at the wines from getting them before they get so cooked by the heat, if you will. And then early vintages, I would just accept that cook from the heat and make those vintages as well. So you'll see, especially with some of the 2020, 2021 wines of Luna Hart, really playing with both approaches to how to handle these extreme heat waves. So I chose Hendricks to bring you here today because this vineyard's very special to me. It's the vineyard I've been working with the longest for Luna Hart since 2018, so this will be my 7th vintage this year. And it is the vineyard that really chose me. So I never set out to make Syrah, but we're in Ballard Canyon. Ballard Canyon is the only AVA in the United States planted predominantly in Syrah. And so this little vineyard is tucked into the south end of Ballard Canyon, meaning that we get a lot of fog influence coming from the west, from the Santa Rita Hills, and then it comes up these little valleys, and this particular vineyard is quite protected even down in its own little valley. So a lot of fog effect here, and then pure beach sand soil. And then the vines themselves are planted Geneva double curtain. So the cordon being up high, and then as the canes form, they will come in and cascade down, and this vineyard really ends up looking like Syrah trees. So there's a lot of protection for the fruit and a lot of fog. So it really ends up making this quite unique to Santa Barbara County and Ballard Canyon cooler climate representation of the grape itself. You can see how long the Syrah canes are. And they literally will come all the way down here. So during harvest, you can barely drive a tractor through these rows. But we have the 2 vines that are then overlapped with each other. And then, as I mentioned, these canes will cascade down. And then the fruit all hangs up underneath here. It's quite unique. And this vineyard was planted in 1999, so a little bit of an older vineyard. And that farming idea was quite popular in the late 90s. So you saw it a bit more back then.